Dr. Faber, so I think we are all ready.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, 잘 들립니다.
Very good. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, and greetings, everyone. It's an early morning here in America. I have my cup of coffee, woke up early, and I'm just delighted to be able to share some time with you. Well, I know it's nighttime there for everyone, I believe. Is that correct? It's evening after teaching? Great. Well, I know we have some various questions that you'd like to ask me today, and I thought I would also take a little time for questions and answers at the end also. So I look forward to hearing your questions and giving some answers. Things are going pretty well here. You know, we've all struggled with the pandemic situation and the difficulties of teaching online. And I think it's a reminder for all of us that is the one-on-one personal relationship with the students are so powerful. And we're thankful then that we have that already developed so that we can maintain that as we move to online teaching. One of the things we notice here in America is it's a little more difficult to start new students online because that would require building that relationship remotely. But building on the existing relationship we have with their students, we find we can still be their coach. We can encourage them to be practicing and continuing to make progress with that based on the existing relationship.
지금 질문이 퍼스트 어드벤처를 어떻게 시작을 하게 됐는지, 어떻게 출판을 하게 됐는지 이제 여쭤본 거거든요. 대답을 한번 들어보겠습니다.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We had really two influences. One is our very own daughter, whom we had adopted from China, and seeing her development was inspiration to how do we teach her that's consistent with that young child's mindset. So observing Vivian and her friends and teaching that group of children, we really could see clearly that it was playful exploration was the mode of learning. So to really bring in a sense of adventurous exploration and fun was the way to reach the young children. In now pedagogy, we want to think of building foundations. And so the foundation for that youngster is really the enjoyment of music making and becoming involved with the sound, singing, and movement. So having that foundation that yet takes them right into piano as part of that foundation has really been a workable program. Yeah, our second influence was that there really wasn't a methodology for teaching the young children that was sufficiently different. We always noticed the big difference between a 7-year-old, say, and a 5-year-old. So we needed to develop a new approach that we could introduce the piano early on. So it's not just movement or music preparation, but actual music making that is tailored for that age.
지금 온라인 티칭, 피아노로 가르칠 때 온라인 티칭이 지금 어떻게 진행이 되고 있는지, 특히 이제 미국에서는 코로나 때문에 코로나 이후로 그런 음악 교육이 어떤 방향으로 흘러가고 있는지 거기에 대한 질문이거든요.
Yes, I think online music instruction is a big compromise because we're dealing with sound and we're dealing with motion and touch. So when we remove the ability to have rapid imitation, demonstration and imitation, we really compromise the teaching. I think there's a difference between knowledge-based learning and skill-based learning. And that skill-based learning deals with so much more of the mentorship of inspiring the individual to put in the hard work effort. And secondly, that skill-based learning requires repetition, very sensitive imitation and specific coaching. And so for that, we really so much prefer the one-on-one experience. I think we see in the educational systems in the schools and in the education departments, there's somewhat of a tendency to think that technology will save us and improve education. but there's some dangers there. It's dangerous for an educational system to think that online technologies is the savior of education. For when, you know, the student confined to the small screen narrows vision, it inhibits the sensory inputs, the sensations. And so we want to expand the individual's awareness and contact. And so really, the screen is so very compromised there. So we don't want to let that drive everything. We want to drive to the keys, to the physical input and outside inputs of auditory and human connection. So we talk to the student, we tend to work that relationship, give some examples, some ideas, but it's really giving the student assignments to go to their keyboard and be working out a project. That's where the real learning occurs. It's not so much on the screen.
Okay. So the third question, 세 번째 질문은 2021년에 이제 새로 출판이 될 그 교재들이 있는지에 대한 질문이거든요.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, we're working right now, inspired partly because of the pandemic crisis, is I've shot about 150 videos on technique and artistry. And so launching those and sharing the technique secrets and the videos there as support is a key part of our movement going forward. And then I've begun developing videos for creative improvisation. So bringing more creativity, even out of each lesson book piece. How could we teach it creatively? How can we inspire the student to apply the patterns in a more creative way? We've also put a lot of work into creating a sight reading course that takes variations on the lesson book pieces. And the use of variations helps the student really learn the patterns of reading. So we found this tremendously effective as an approach to sight reading. And then along with that, we've developed and are testing a sight reading coach app that listens to the student playing and gives some feedback. So we take these many variations and then the student at home can have their phone listen and coach them to play. Then we have so much more practicing and learning of the reading that occurs. So that's been our research and development area. And we look forward to being able to share that in Korea as well very soon.
그래서 이 음악 출판에 어떻게 해서 음악 출판을 계속 꾸준히 이제 하시게 됐는지 거기에 대한 질문입니다.
Well, we really felt early on that there were so many children that would be dropping out of piano. In our own studios, we found parents coming to us because they saw their students not interested in piano and wanting to drop. And especially this would happen a lot in America with many boys that just didn't relate to piano. And they would come to us for inspiration. And so instead of having them drop out, we would get them creating at the piano, we would get them inspired. And we had such success with that we realized we needed to make this into a methodology that could be widely published. My own experiences as a teenager was that I was played a lot of pop music, and I was fortunate to have a recording contract at age 18. And so I was played much in the recording studio and on some big stages with the rock music, with popular music. But at the same time, I was playing in the piano concerto competitions and all. And so I had a very strong urge to see how do these come together. My improvisation and pop was kind of one world, and then playing the Schumann piano concertos, they would be another world. But these come together, and that's been inspiration. And how do you teach the merging of these patterns and skills, especially creatively? So we build the foundations then of that musical pattern recognition that can apply both in the classics, it can also apply in a pop world or jazz world. And that opened up, maybe you might say, new opportunities in piano pedagogy.
이건 조금 박사님께 조금 개인적인 질문일 수 있는데 좋아하는 뮤지션이 있으신지, 아니면 뮤지션인데 이제 영향을 주신, 그러니까 박사님께 영향을 준 그런 뮤지션이 있으신지에 대한 질문이거든요.
Oh, that's a nice question. When I was rather young, in my early teens, I played a master class for pianist James Dick, and he's a moderately well-known pianist at the time. He did a lot of touring around the U.S. with symphonies, and after the master class, we were able to meet and talk. And he took me out to dinner, and I had a chance to be, you might say, mentored by someone who had a very successful career. I found that inspiring. And what he would do, which inspired me as well, is instead of just playing the concert, when he came into a city, he would do a TV show broadcast, and he would go into a local college or high school and offer master class. So he connected into the community to really serve the musical arts. And I was impressed with his energy and his devotion, and that became a model for my career as well. On the pop side, I was a teenager when Elton John came onto the scene. And I right away was influenced by the fact that he was at a grand piano. His piano stylings were somewhat classical pop. And so I took to that really well and would imitate all of his recordings and developing my own pop sound by kind of combining an Elton John and a more of an American blues.
Wow.
So bringing those two influences together, that was my inspiration on the popular side.
네, 여섯 번째 질문은 can you tell us about the benefits? 피아노 어드벤처 북으로 공부를 했을 때 어떤 이익이 있을지 거기에 대한 질문이거든요.
Well, I think what's unique about Piano Adventures is kind of threefold. One is it's appealing to the students. And what we wanted to do is make sure we had sounds that the student felt were musical and expressive so that they enjoyed playing the songs. And so bringing that music right into the mindset of the child was very important and continues to be an important benefit of Piano Adventures. And then secondly, we wanted to develop more pattern recognition so that when a student is playing, for instance, a Clementi Sonatina or a Beethoven Sonata, they really understand what key they're in, the scales, the 1 and 5 cadences. And that can't start at the college level, but that more intense and deep pattern recognition needs to take place early. So with Piano Adventures, we really drive in a better understanding of harmony and application of that harmony at the keyboard right from the early levels. And then thirdly is the technique and artistry. Our objective is expression. And so to achieve the expression at the keyboard, we need more colors. So that means a variety of touch. So we worked hard to make sure piano playing was more than just finger muscle movement, but developing the finger playing involved more adaptations and working with the wrist, the coordination of wrist, hand, and fingers. And so giving a variety of touches and tools of relaxation and efficiency really in the piano playing is a very important part of Piano Adventures. And it develops that at the start so that the habits forming are correct habits that build into a virtuoso technique rather than having to undo bad habits at the beginning.
그 강한 손가락 그리고 단단한 손가락 끝을 가르치기 위한 최고의 방법은 무엇일까요? 그러니까 퍼스트 어드벤처를 사용하면서요. 그것에 대한 질문이거든요.
In my first piano adventure, we addressed it early on with the ideas like cookie dough, where we're pressing the fingertip into the cookie dough, like pressing chocolate chips in. So the balance one on fingertip, so we take, let's say, finger 3, and we balance and then push, push, push. So we have the whole arm, and there's that rounded hand shape and that motion here, forward motion with the elbow. So we could even take that a step further. If you balance, you can kind of wiggle on that. You see, so the student feels that sensation. And then the dipping the donuts, so we have the relaxed wrist along with the firm fingertip. You may recall a little later in the book, we have Mitzi's cat back, to do a cat back. This is where the wrist drives forward. But you can see what happens on the finger. It moves almost from the flat to the curve. So it's a process of moving into the curve. And that can be thought of as an advanced technique, but we can work with that, almost molding the finger into the rounded hand shape as the finger plays, even at that early level. We can see even at an advanced level how that develops ultimately. And for more speed, you actually can walk through a set of notes moving forward with that mid-teeth gap back. So we're moving into the curve consecutively of finger to finger. That's so much different than just doing, say, this.
오케이. 그다음에 여덟 번째 질문은요. 테크닉을 쉽게 가르칠 수 있는 그런 팁이 있나요?라는 질문이에요.
Well, I think one has to be somewhat forgiving. You know, there's sometimes we can think, oh, we have to get it exactly right. And while I like to say we get technique right from the start, we have to provide the right habits at the beginning. We also understand that they're developed in a spiral. In other words, you work through the foundations and then you refine them again and you refine them. So our technique secrets are written to be able to provide the right foundation at each level. And then the secrets kind of cycle back at later levels. So they're brought back with more finesse or more fine tuning. This way we actually inhibiting bad habits from ever entering in. And then as the students' coordination builds, then we can have more refinement in the application of the techniques. If you wanted to take it to simplicity, it's really at the earliest level, getting the structure of the hand. So you get the structure of the fingers, everything correct, structure of the posture and hand. And then at this next level, ensuring the wrist is relaxed. So we get a combination of relaxed wrist and fingertip. And then at the next levels, the levels, you know, moving towards intermediate, we do then much more with rotation and wrist circles. So we have, how do we integrate these larger gestures into the playing?
Okay. So question number 9, 9번 질문인데요. 학생들이 연습을 할 수 있도록 어떻게 동기부여를 해줄 수 있나요?라는 질문이에요.
That's a really good question, and that is a hard one. For one, we really best taking students on a one-to-one basis. In other words, what is this student's interest? And if we can connect personally with the student, we can find what songs they like, what songs they don't. And it's perfectly okay when a student doesn't like a particular song. We can move rapidly through it. That's not one to stay with and to try to get everything, every little detail right. Just get the idea of what we're trying to teach and move on. And then when you have a song that is really powerfully and liked by the student, that's when we can go deep. I think it's important to understand also age-related motivations. And we've talked about that from time to time, especially some years ago in Korea, that at different ages, there are different motivations that intrinsically apply. So that foundational motivation at young ages is the fun. So we smile, we build that relationship, we enjoy the exploration. Then as the student gets older, it's more about reflecting back to the student their competence. You know, what did they do really well? What are they good at? And getting that fire in their belly, so to speak, getting their motivation to put in the hard work to drive towards that feeling of successful competence, ability.
So question number 10. 10번 문제는 10번 질문은 오케이. 그 독보 능력을 그 증진시킬 수 있는 최고의 방법은 무엇입니까라는 질문이거든요.
For the reading music ability, well, I think what we do in Piano Adventures is try to combine all of the expert tactics, so to speak, of how as an expert do we read music. So what we do first is recognizing the line to space reading. In other words, stepping or my line to line skips, or does it repeat? So step, skip, repeat in directional reading, and then combining that with learning their note names, little by little, but learning discrete note names, but seeing the notes in context. And then we expand that pattern recognition from simply directional step and skip into seeing the outlines of chord patterns. So the student understands in the key of G, I've got these line to line for my 1 chord, and here's my 5, 7. So we can anchor the notes on the page to those keys related to the scale tones. And these are, all laid out in the Piano Adventures lesson books, but then also in our scale and chord books, it's a deep dive, if you will, a deep look and application with transposition of the importance of those scale tones and chord tones. And we see that it's a broader pattern recognition within the key.
So question 11, 11번째 질문은 만약에 피아노에 흥미를 잃은 학생들한테는 어떤 해결책이 있을까요? 라는 질문이에요.
I think there is definitely if you can find through discussion with a student, what's their favorite type of music? What do they want to play? What brought them to the piano in the first place? And often that kind of renews the initial interest that they had, and then just focus in on the right piece at the right time. And often that right piece can help tremendously. Sometimes it takes a little different sort of catalyst, like it could be an opportunity to play for some peers or play a song that their peer group, their friends like, and having that opportunity to play within an ensemble might be a catalyst. In other words, an event that shifts their mindset. I like to think of having these kind of precipitating events that kind of kick off a spur of interest, and we look for and watch for situations and events that will make that happen. Sometimes it's a piece, sometimes it's a performance, sometimes it's an ensemble opportunity. Sometimes we can rethink a little bit too, instead of being it all about being at the keyboard. As much as we may love playing and practicing, maybe the student wants to take a shift towards, say, composing. And we say, let's take a little slow down on your practice, but let's just practice some scale and chord books for a while, and let's focus in on some compositions of your very own. And says, oh, really? I think I can do that? And then you give them some ideas, and you work with manuscript paper, work with a score program, maybe work even with some drum tracks, so they have some rhythms they're creating on top of. And something like that can sometimes be a wonderful opportunity to get them back on track, but by stepping out of the normal.
Question 12, 12번 질문인데요. 페다고지에서 가장 중요한 부분이 뭐라고 생각하시는지 거기에 대한 질문이거든요.
I think that the most important part is the relationship between student and teacher. Your ability to communicate, to mentor that student, to show that you have interest in their development and you have belief in their ability. It's amazing the progress a student can make if they feel you believe in them and that you have interest in caring for them. Sometimes we get caught up in that. We seem to care more for the instrument and the success of our studio instead of realizing that we're interested in that student as a person and in their own development and their own interests. And sometimes piano may not be at the forefront, but it plays a role in their life. So how can we be interested in their life trajectory? How do we teach them to, be creative, look a little out of the box, be sensitive and expressive, and do that through music? And maybe those kind of skills of artistry that they're applying in their process of learning to play the piano can also apply in other areas of life.
그래서 question 13, 13번 질문인데요. 이 질문은 피아노 어드벤처가 우리나라 말고도 다른 나라에서 어디서 사용이 되고 있는지, 그리고 2021년에는 그 피아노 어드벤처 업데이트 계획이 있는지 거기에 대한 질문이거든요.
Good question. We are in maybe 10 or 11 languages. So in Korea, of course, Japan, China, there's a Taiwan traditional Mandarin edition. We sell very well in Australia, New Zealand, and in the European countries, we have a German edition, a Dutch edition, Greek edition, and then just recently, the Italian edition has come out at the early levels. And then the Spanish edition, which is also sells well in Mexico and Colombia, Central and South America. Of course, US and Canada. For plans moving forward, we have the attention on student needs and doing more with the creativity for the student so that we have some more tools, you might say, for the teacher to use to take the lesson book pieces and our supplements and build a more creative application for them. That's the direction that we're moving right now. And empowering the teacher, making sure the teacher has the tools to be able to comfortably and confidently bring in the creative elements for the student.
It's going to be the last question. 마지막 질문인데요. 페이버 박사님 지금 우리 온라인으로 뵙고 있잖아요. 근데 실제로 이제 뵙고 싶은데 언제쯤 한국에 이제 방문하실 수 있는지에 대한 질문이에요.
Very good question. Well, we have a lot depending on the pandemic situation, but there's certainly good hope on the horizon with all of the vaccines now available.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to be able to get the vaccine myself in about 2 weeks. And once the travel restrictions are lifted and all. So I think we need a good 6 months to get through that. So it probably won't be this spring, but I'm hoping to be able to come to Korea this fall. I think that would be wonderful. Very good to see you all. I'm seeing many of you on the screen, and it's delightful to be here. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank
Thank you. Wishing you all the best and hope to see you soon.
박사님 가신다고 합니다. 손 한번 흔들어 주세요.
Bye-bye.
유튜브에서 뮤직 어드벤처를 검색해 보세요.